I heard him say it. God, why is she still breathing? Her existence is a curse that refuses to die. The laugh that followed was low and easy, like it had been practiced. I stood on the other side of the wooden fence, balancing a still warm pan of apple crisp against my hip. My fingers tightened around the hot glass. I didn't drop it. I didn't turn back. I pushed open the gate. The backyard was strewn with white bulbs and paper lanterns that bobbed in the late afternoon wind. Folding tables, plastic tablecloths, plastic cups. The smell of charcoal and cheap beer. Voices everywhere. None of them turned toward me. Some of those faces had my blood in them. The rest were strangers with sunglasses and loud shirts. No one smiled. Someone cleared their throat. Oh. Tori. We didn't know you were coming. That was Sienna. My son's wife. Same voice that had just asked why I was still alive. Her lipstick was perfect. Her eyes weren't. I brought dessert, I said, holding up the dish. No one offered to take it. I walked past the cooler, past the speaker thumping out some song that used to be for teenagers but now belonged to algorithms. I found a spot at the far end of the table. The metal chair complained when I sat. My back did, too. I straightened anyway. Smoke, grilled meat, citronella, spilled beer, cut grass. The scents layered over each other, heavy and familiar. Music pounded against the fence. Someone shouted for ketchup. Someone else yelled, to family, and raised a bottle. That was my son. Daniel. When the plastic cups knocked together, no one glanced down to the end of the table where I sat with my hands folded in my lap. The children, my grandchildren, ran past in wild loops. Once, twice, 3 times. Sticky faces, tangled hair, shrieks of laughter, not a single hi, Grandma. Not a single questioning blink that recognized me without my grocery bags or my flour-dusted apron. I used to bring them gummy bears and sticker books. Little things. Small rituals of love in Ziploc bags. Sienna eventually approached. She leaned in, that tight little smile she reserves for cameras and people she wishes were furniture. Did you want a plate? I'm fine, I said. She nodded too quickly, the way people do when they're already somewhere else, and walked away before I could add anything. I stayed until the end, like someone who had been invited. I stacked plates. I gathered red cup sticky with backwash. I wiped down the table with a damp paper towel while laughter migrated inside with the air conditioning. No one told me not to bother. No one told me thank you. I picked up my empty baking dish, still warm from the sun, and left. Not in a storm of rage, not in a puddle of tears. I left with a decision I did not yet have the words for. The next morning, I brewed coffee in my smallest pot. Just enough for 1 cup. I sat at my kitchen table by the window, the same table where Daniel once did his math homework, legs too long for the chair, tongue between his teeth in concentration. Back then he called, Ma, every 5 minutes like breathing. Back then, he needed me. Now he endured me. I didn't switch on the television. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't speak to anyone. The baking dish sat on the counter, clean and dry. Ready, like always. I stepped outside once to collect the mail. 2 catalogs, a charity envelope, the electricity bill with Daniel's name typed neatly on the top line. Their house, I thought. My house, once, $40,000. I could see the number as clearly as if it were still burning in the bank manager's eyes. The down payment had come from my retirement fund 11 years ago, when I still believed in helping them get started and we're family, it'll all come back around. No strings, I had said. Apparently also no seat at the table. The paperwork was in the old file cabinet in the spare room. I'd labeled the folder in careful blue ink, Daniel's house. Because that's what I thought I was building. I opened the drawer. The cabinet stuck halfway, it always did. Pushing it open felt like cracking a stubborn rib. I pulled out the folder and laid everything on the table. Purchase agreement. Title. Mortgage note. My letter. I knew exactly what it said. I'd written it myself on thick stationery as if it were a blessing. To Daniel and Sienna, this gift is given with no expectation of repayment, because you are my family. My own handwriting mocked me. It hurt more than Sienna's laugh. More than Daniel's absence. Because this was the version of me that had believed that sentence would be enough. I closed my eyes, just for a second. When I opened them, I reached for the phone. Her name was Nadine. We'd met years ago at a churchyard sale when we both grabbed the same ugly vase and then laughed about how hideous it was. She used to work in probate court before she retired. Sharp eyes, sharper brain. We played cards together a few times, traded recipes, kept each other's numbers without using them much. "Hey, it's Tori," I said when she answered. There was a brief pause. "Well, if you're calling me before noon, it's either very good news or very bad news." "I have questions," I replied. "About gifts. Property. What can and can't be undone." She didn't ask why. "Bring everything," she said. "Tomorrow morning. 9 sharp. I'll make coffee." That night, I slept without pills. No pacing, no compulsive checking of locks. My dreams weren't peaceful, exactly, but they lined up with my waking thoughts for the first time in a long while. In the morning, I dressed like I used to dress for job interviews. Proper slacks. A blouse with buttons. Real shoes with a tiny heel. I even dug out the navy coat, though the air was already warm. When you intend to change your life, you don't wear elastic. Nadine's house smelled like lemon oil and strong coffee. The kind of place where nothing was allowed to sit out of place unless she wanted it that way. She spread my papers across her dining table, adjusting her glasses halfway down her nose. She read quickly, lips tightening once, then twice. "You signed a gift letter," she said finally. "No lien, no shared interest. You handed the money over and walked away." "I know," I said. I did. Knowing it and seeing it under her finger were different things. "This house is theirs," she said. "Legally." Clean as a whistle. My throat prickled. I figured. "But," she added, looking up, "that doesn't make you helpless." The word spun differently in my chest than powerless. Helpless suggested someone had taken something. Powerless implied I'd never had it to begin with. She pushed a legal pad toward me. "You can't pull back what you already gave them. Not this way. And you can't evict yourself onto the title." "But wills? Beneficiary designations? Powers of attorney? Bank access? That's still yours to shape." I stared at the page as she listed words in tidy columns. Trust. Healthcare proxy. Beneficiary. Revocation. "You can't undo their house," she said. "You can absolutely stop feeding the fire that heats it." 3 sentences. The room seemed to tilt. "I thought that would make me petty," I said. "Petty is keying someone's car," Nadine said, leaning back. "This is called boundaries. The courts actually like those." She gave me a checklist. 10 items. Black ink. Clear as commandments. I folded the page with careful, deliberate hands and slid it into my purse as if it were a ticket. That night, back at my kitchen table, I spread a blank sheet of paper in front of me. At the top I wrote my son's name, Daniel. I looked at it for a long time, remembering school plays and lost teeth and midnight fevers. Then, slowly, I drew a straight line through his name. The ink didn't scream. It whispered. Enough. On Wednesday, I baked a cake I had no intention of sharing. Chocolate with dark cocoa and a little instant coffee to deepen the flavor. The good recipe. The one I used to save for their birthdays, for Easter, for Thanksgiving. This time it was just for me. No holiday, no occasion. Just because I was still here. I sat on the front steps while it cooled on the counter behind me, my knees under an old blanket my sister had knitted the winter before she died. The street was ordinary, a boy on a skateboard, a woman dragging a trash can, a man walking a dog that stopped to examine every blade of grass. At 4 o'clock, a car I recognized eased into the driveway across the street. Sienna's sister, Maya, hopped out with a bag of groceries and a bottle of wine clinking against her hip. She knocked once, then let herself in. No hesitation. No performance. She belonged there. I hadn't been invited to that house in 4 months. The last time, for Lila's birthday, my granddaughter, I'd been seated near the trash can so you won't be too close to the speakers, Tori, Daniel had said, as if shoving me by the bin was an act of mercy. Lila hadn't opened my gift until after I left, a handmade storybook sewn with ribbon. I'd heard later she liked the dog on page 3. I saw them twice after that. Once at the grocery store. Daniel had a cart full of sparkling water and gluten-free crackers. He saw me. His mouth twitched like a muscle spasm. "Hey, Ma," he said, as if bumping into me at the frozen peas was a coincidence and not gravity. Sienna pretended to be riveted by a display of tomatoes. Another time at the library. Lila brushed past me in the YA section. Her eyes slid over me, then away, like I was a teacher she couldn't quite place. I had a drawer in my hallway full of small treasures for them. Stickers. Gel pens. Little notebooks. Tiny things, just in case the kids dropped by. For years that drawer had been an altar to hope. That afternoon, I emptied it. Every last thing into a paper grocery bag. I set it at the curb with the recycling. A bright, ridiculous offering no one wanted. I watched the bag sit untouched, the way I had. That evening, my phone buzzed on the counter. "Hey, Mom. Sienna thinks you maybe took something she said the wrong way on Sunday. She was just wiped, you know how she gets at these things. Don't take it so personally. Love you." I read it once. Then again. I didn't respond. I didn't archive it to reread when the guilt came. I pressed and held and hit delete. I had spent years cataloging their excuses like souvenirs. I was done curating my own erasure. At 7, someone knocked. For a second, my heart tripped. Then I saw a blue scarf through the glass. June from next door stood there, holding a plastic container. "Lentil stew," she announced, and a question about a missing cat. I hadn't seen the cat, but I invited her in. We sat at the table and split the chocolate cake, eating with more enthusiasm than grace. She talked about the cat, about her sister's new hip, about the price of onions. She did not mention Daniel. She did not ask why my eyes looked heavier than usual. "This cake," she said eventually, "is so good I'm pretty sure my blood pressure just forgave me for everything." We laughed. My laugh felt rusty, but it worked. After she left, I walked down the hallway and picked up a picture frame from the shelf. Me and Daniel. Year unknown, I could tell from his missing front teeth and his bowl haircut that he was about 8. He was grinning, his hand tangled in my hair, as if I was the sun and he was hanging on for dear life. "I miss you," I whispered to that boy in the glass. Not the man. The boy. I turned the frame face down. Then I went to my desk and pulled out the envelope labeled legal. My will. My medical directive. The durable power of attorney Daniel had signed 3 years ago when I slipped on the back steps and everyone panicked for 2 brief, shining weeks. He'd never asked about it again. Like writing his name on that line had completed his sonly duties for the foreseeable future. I laid the documents in my lap. Tomorrow, I thought, I'm changing the rest of it. Nadine's friend, the estate attorney, had an office that smelled like paper and old coffee cups that had been washed properly. His name was Victor Hale. Gray hair, slow gestures, the kind of man who listened with his whole face. "I want to start with this," I said, placing the power of attorney on his desk. "I want it gone. Revoked. Erased. Whatever the word is." He scanned it. "That's a big change, Ms. Cartwright." "My name is Tori," I said. "And yes. That's the point." "Are you certain?" he asked. I'm 69, I replied. I'm not doing much by accident anymore. He nodded. All right. We'll prepare a revocation and file notice. You'll sign. I'll notarize. He'll have no legal authority to speak on your behalf. I felt something release in the base of my skull. And my will, I said. I want his name out of it. Completely. Not as executor. Not as beneficiary. Nothing. His pen hovered. That's thorough, he said mildly. You understand the emotional implications? I understand the emotional implications of being laughed about behind a fence. I answered. This feels tame in comparison. He studied me for a moment, then smiled. Fair. Who would you like to act in his place? He asked. I don't know yet, I admitted. Maybe a professional. Someone who doesn't look at me like I'm a loose cable in the way. We can write in a fiduciary company for now, he said. You can always change it later. And my house, I added. When I die, I don't want it going to them. At all. I want it sold and the money donated. There's a shelter across town. Haven House. I stayed there once. Before Daniel was born. They're always scraping by. His expression shifted from professional to something gentler. We can set up a living trust, he said. You're the trustee and current beneficiary. When you pass, the house is sold and the proceeds go directly to Haven House. No loopholes, I said. No loopholes, he agreed. We worked for 2 hours. Clauses, signatures, initial here, here, and here. My hand cramped. I didn't complain. When we finished, Victor handed me a slim binder. This is your trust packet, he said. Keep it somewhere safe. We'll file what needs filing. As of today, you are fully in charge of your life. Funny, I said, how long I lived without believing that. On the way home, I stopped at the bakery I hadn't visited in years. The girl behind the counter called me ma'am and told me my earrings were awesome. She handed me a free cookie just because. I bought a lemon bar and ate it in the car while the sun warmed my hands on the steering wheel. The sweetness sat on my tongue like a promise instead of a bribe. When I got home, my answering machine blinked. One new message. Hey, Mom. It's Daniel. I got some notifications about legal stuff changing. Not sure what that's about. Sienna says you were off on Sunday. Anyway. Call me back so we can straighten this out. I deleted it. Then I blocked his number. The next morning, I called a locksmith. He was young, polite, a little too talkative. He changed both locks, front and back, without asking why. When he handed me the new keys, they clinked like tiny weapons. I had 4 copies made. One for my purse. One for the small fireproof box in the closet. One for June next door with her missing cat and loud laugh. One for my safety deposit box at the bank. That night I slept all the way through. No dreams I could remember. No jolting awake to listen for cars that never stopped in front of my house. Saturday dawned smelling like wet concrete and coming rain. Not dramatic thunderstorm rain, just that quiet, persistent kind that soaks the edges of things. I dug my rubber boots out from under the bed and stepped into the backyard. The marigolds along the fence were slumped, their orange heads tilted like they'd had enough. So had I. I clipped them back with slow, steady cuts. The shears felt solid in my hand. Useful. Mine. At noon I drove to the credit union. Inside, everything hummed, printers, murmured conversations, the soft bing of the ticket system. I asked to speak with a manager. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a crisp blazer led me to her glass-walled office. Her name tag said Trina. What can I do for you today, Ms. Cartwright? I'd like to see a list of everyone who has access to my accounts. I said. Authorized users, cosigners, linked cards. All of it. She typed, her nails clicking gently against the keys. You have one joint owner, she said. And one authorized card holder. A Daniel Cartwright. Your son? Used to be, I said before I could stop myself. She hesitated. Did you want to change that? I want him removed, I said. Completely. No more access. Cancel his card, invalidate his login, set new security questions so he can't fish his way back in. Her hands paused over the keyboard. Everything solely in your name? Yes, I said. And put a note on the account. No changes unless I am physically present with identification. No phone authorizations. No, my son is calling for me. Ever. She nodded slowly. We can do that. While she worked, I studied the pothose plant in the corner. Long, heart-shaped leaves trailing down the filing cabinet. I used to have one in Daniel's nursery. He'd tried to eat the dirt once. I'd laughed so hard I'd nearly dropped him. Trina printed out forms for me to sign. If you ever want to set up a trust account or automatic donations, we can help with that too. Not yet, I said. I'm still assembling the next version of myself. She smiled at that. I like the way you put that. When I left, I didn't feel giddy. I felt clear. Like someone had washed my windows and the view was exactly the same but finally visible. At home, I went to the hall closet, pulled out the fireproof box, and opened it. Deed, birth certificates, old insurance policies, and expired passport. I took out Daniel's birth certificate. I didn't tear it up. I didn't burn it. I slipped it into a new folder labeled History and tucked it into a different drawer. The person he'd been belonged there. With the things I wasn't destroying but no longer built my days around. That afternoon, I opened my ancient address book. It still had plastic letter tabs from the 90s. The A-B tab was cracked. The C was intact. I flipped to it. Cartwright, Daniel and Sienna. Cartwright, Lila. I drew one neat line through each entry. Not scribbling. Not rage. Just correction. Then I turned to H and wrote a new name. Hale, Victor, attorney. Trust and estate. Nadine, ask about bridge on Thursdays. The phone rang again that evening. Unknown number. I let it ring until the machine picked up. Tori, it's Sienna. We really don't understand what you're doing. Daniel has been trying to call you nonstop. Lila's been asking why you're being so distant. We're worried about you. Please call us back. This is all, a lot. Lila hadn't asked me anything in weeks. She hadn't even texted happy birthday when Facebook reminded the world I still existed. Sienna's idea of worry sounded suspiciously like annoyed that the toy stopped working. I switched the machine off. Silence settled over the kitchen like a blanket that finally fit. On Monday, I circled a classified ad in the local paper. One-bedroom apartment. Ground floor. Quiet building. Washer/dryer. No stairs. No pets required. I clipped it out with the scissors I used to reserve for sewing and taped it to the fridge. Not as an escape, not yet. As a possibility. In the afternoon, I called the number. Willow Court Apartments, a woman answered. This is Teresa, do you have anything open? I asked. One left on the first floor, she said. Most of our tenants are retirees and teachers. It's calm. Do you want to come see it? Do you allow cats? I asked. There was a pause. We do. Do you have one? No, I said. But I like knowing I could. We set a viewing for Thursday. The call came Sunday night. Grandma? The word landed in my chest like something fragile and dangerous. Lila? I said. Is this still your number? She asked. Her voice was thinner than I remembered. Younger. I stole it from one of Dad's old phones. He doesn't know. It's still my number, I said quietly. I wanted to say I'm sorry. The words rushed out and tangled. About the barbecue. And the grocery store. And the library. And your birthday. All of it. I didn't rush to soothe her. That instinct had been my downfall. Patch their shame, hide their cruelty, make everyone comfortable. I had evicted that part of myself with prejudice. What are you sorry for? I asked instead. For pretending not to see you, she said. For laughing when Mom said what she said. It wasn't funny. I just wanted everyone to think I could take a joke. And I thought you'd always be there anyway. You wanted to belong, I said. Yes, she whispered. I didn't forgive her on the spot. You don't mend a broken bone by patting it and saying all better. But something loosened between us. Thank you for telling me, I said. Can I see you? She blurted. Just me. Not Mom and Dad. Just me. If you don't want to, that's tomorrow, I said. After school. Just you. You knock. I'll open. No one else. She exhaled like she'd been underwater. I promise. After we hung up, I sat at the table with a cup of tea cooling in my hands. I didn't feel hopeful, exactly. Hope had teeth. This felt more like an open door with a chain still on. Monday was gray and drizzly. The kind of day that made edges softer and colors bluer. I baked banana bread. Not for Daniel's kids. Not for the potlucks I kept being forgotten for, just to make the house smell like something besides lemon-scented cleaners and paperwork. At 4:09, there was a tentative knock. Lila stood on the porch in an oversized hoodie and sneakers with the laces half undone. There was mascara smudged under one eye. Or maybe just tired. I didn't know if you'd actually open, she said. I didn't know if you'd actually knock, I replied. We both tried to smile. It came out stupid and perfect. We sat at the kitchen table. She picked the edges off her slice of bread. I poured tea she didn't drink. Mom says you've gone dramatic, she said finally, that you're cutting us out to make some kind of point. I'm not cutting, I said. I'm choosing. There's a difference. She nodded like she could almost see it. Dad says you're punishing him for one bad day. I laughed, but without humor. If this started on Sunday, it would be easy. She stared at her hands. I miss you, she whispered. The you at the library. The you who made hot chocolate in the blue mugs. The you who'd let me lick the spoon. You miss the version of me that swallowed everything so no one had to feel uncomfortable, I said gently. That wasn't really me, Lila, that was survival. She looked up, eyes shining. Can I come back? Not to your wool or whatever. Just to you? You can, I said. But not for presents. Not for cookies. Only for truth. Even when it makes both of us squirm. I can do that, she said. I think. She stayed an hour. We talked about school and a girl in her class who dyed her hair green, about a math teacher who said okay after every sentence. We did not talk about Daniel. We did not talk about Sienna. As she left, I handed her another slice of banana bread wrapped in foil. That night, I wrote in my journal, maybe some doors don't need to slam. Maybe they just need locks on the inside and windows cracked for people who arrive alone and knock like they mean it. Thursday, Teresa met me at Willow Court. Brick buildings. Flower beds with more mulch than flowers. A metal bench under a linden tree that shed tiny yellow blossoms onto the walkway. Unit 1C, she said, unlocking the door. South-facing windows. Quiet neighbors. Plumbing that works unless the moon is full. The apartment was small. No dining room, just a kitchen big enough for one person to turn around in twice. A living area that could hold a couch and maybe a chair if they were friendly. One bedroom, one bathroom. No attic full of history. No stairs. But the light through the windows was clean. The laminate counters pretended to be stone and failed. I didn't care. I ran my hand along them anyway. The fridge hummed like it was keeping secrets. I liked it. I'll take it, I said. You don't want to think on it? Teresa asked. I've been thinking on it since I lent my son $40,000, I replied. This is the easy decision. We did the paperwork that afternoon. Deposit. First month's rent. Move-in date 3 weeks out. Enough time to pack without fury. That night, back at my old kitchen table, I wrote my new address on a small index card. Tori Cartwright. 128, Willow Court, Apartment 1C. Underneath, I wrote, no forwarding for Daniel. And then, because it made me laugh, I underlined it. 2 days later, Daniel's car idled in front of my house long enough for the engine to complain. He finally came to the door and knocked. Not tentatively. Not aggressively. Just, like someone who believed doors opened for him. I met him there but did not unbolt it. You blocked my number, he said through the wood. His voice sounded muted and farther away than the inches between us. You changed your accounts. Sienna says you're rewriting everything. Yes, I said. Why? He sounded lost, and for a moment, against my will, I saw his 8-year-old face instead of the man who'd watched me carry my own chair at his barbecues. You want the short version or the one that takes 30 years? I asked. Is this about what Sienna said? He demanded. At the cookout? I didn't know you were there. You know how she is. She runs her mouth. It was a joke. A joke has to have a punchline, I said. That was just contempt you didn't bother to hide because you thought I was too far away to hear. He shifted. I imagined his hand in his hair, the way he rubbed it when he didn't like the truth. So that's it, he said. You're erasing me from your life because of one bad afternoon? One afternoon? I repeated softly. You think this is about one afternoon? The words rose like a tide I'd held back for years. All the too late texts. The we already ate when I arrived with food, the Christmas where they told me. Don't bother bringing anything, the kids don't like old-fashioned desserts, and then laughed when Lila said my pie tasted like soap. The birthdays where I was seated at the far end with the trash and the extra chairs. The barbecue was just the final straw, I said. You stacked the rest yourself. Mom, you can't do this, he said. I'm your son. And I'm the woman who gave up money I couldn't spare and time I can't get back, I replied. Being my son is not a free lifetime pass to treat me like background noise. You let Lila come, he said, the accusation sharp. She came alone, I said. She didn't wait until the bank called her. There was a long silence. Then, this is about money, he decided, reaching for the only language he trusted. We'll pay you back if that's what you want. It's not about money, I said. If it were, you'd be relieved. This is about dignity, Daniel. Mine. The one you kept borrowing without noticing. He sighed, long and theatrical. You're going to regret this. Maybe, I said. But at least the regret will be mine. I stepped back from the door. I love you, he called, not sounding like it at all. I love the boy you were, I thought. The man you became will have to earn it. I did not say it out loud. I let the silence answer for me. After a while, his footsteps retreated. The car engine started. Gravel crunched. I waited 10 minutes, then exhaled. Then I cried for 7 minutes. I know because I watched the kitchen clock. I let myself feel it. Fully. The crack, the ache, the small death. Then I washed my face, made tea, and labeled another moving box. Keep. The next Sunday, I invited 3 women over for tea. Not family, not people with shared DNA and sharp tongues. Friends. Marcia came first, with her limp and her bag of crossword puzzles. Then Ida in her faux fur collar despite the mild weather. Then Nora from the old choir days, wearing perfume that smelled like violets and dusty hymnals. They offered to bring food. I said no and meant it. I baked one simple spice cake anyway. Enough for 4 slices and one left over. We sat at the table by the window. I poured tea into my mismatched blue and white cups, the ones that had survived 2 moves and 1 near drop. We talked about aching knees and grocery prices and how the pastor's new haircut made him look like a cartoon. We laughed. No one asked about Daniel. No one asked, but he's your only child, right? Like it was a curse I'd placed on myself. When the conversation lulled, I cleared my throat. I'm moving, I said. 3 sets of brows lifted. No one said, you can't. A little place across town, I continued. Willow Court. 1st floor. It's small, but the windows are honest. Does your son know? Ida asked gently. He doesn't need to, I said. Marcia nodded once, like that was entirely sufficient. They stayed another hour. Washed cups. Wrapped the extra slice of cake in foil. Promised to call and then actually would. After they left, the house felt still. Not empty. Just, between. I walked through each room, not saying goodbye, but taking inventory. Bedroom, keep the quilt, leave the dresser. Hallway, the cross-stitch that says peace lives here had left a clean rectangle on the wall. I decided the wall deserved the piece more than I did, I'd take the frame. In Daniel's old room, the curtains still had sailing boats. I'd meant to replace them 100 times. Somehow, I never did. There was a shoebox at the back of the closet labeled private in his childhood scrawl. I didn't open it. My imagination could do whatever that box did with less damage. I sat on the edge of his old bed and looked out at the crooked apple tree. Time had pulled it sideways, but every spring it still bloomed in a burst of white like it hadn't gotten the memo. You stubborn thing, I whispered. We understood each other. On Wednesday at 10:42 a.m. the doorbell rang. The mail came at noon. June knocked like she was apologizing to the wood. This knock was precise. Practiced. I opened it. Sienna stood there in heeled boots unsuited to concrete and a coat the color of rainwater. Her hair was flawless. Her eyes were tight. Tori, she said, like she was tasting the word and not sure she liked it. Sienna, I replied. She didn't wait to be invited. She walked in like she still believed this house was a part of her property package. I closed the door because I didn't want my neighbors hearing us, not because she deserved privacy. She took up the center of my living room, hands clasped around the handle of her designer purse. You could see the speech written in the tension of her shoulders. This, she began, has gotten out of hand. I agree, I said. You blocked Daniel. You've changed your accounts. You're letting Lila sneak over here like this is some soap opera. And now I hear you're moving. All true. She blinked, thrown for a second. Apparently, she'd planned for denial, not agreement. We're your family, she said, putting weight on the word like it was a hammer. You don't just erase your family because you're in a mood. I looked at her. Really looked. At the woman who walked into my kitchen and moved things without asking. The woman who once told me my casserole dish didn't fit her aesthetic when she'd used my money to buy marble countertops. It wasn't a mood, I said. It was decades. The mood just finally got tired of being polite. We never asked you for anything, she snapped. You're acting like we've drained you dry. You never asked, I said. You just expected. The down payment. The babysitting. The last-minute favors. The food you told me not to bring and then let your friends eat. The holidays where I was invited at the last possible moment so you could say I'd been included. She rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. You always do this. You twist things. I'm not twisting anything, I said. I'm just not smoothing it over anymore. She took a step closer. Do you have any idea what you're doing to Daniel? To Lila? She's confused and hurt and you're using her to send a message. Lila came to me, I said. Alone. Searched for my number in one of your old phones because she couldn't find it anywhere else. She's 16. She knows what it means to be frozen out. Sienna scoffed. Teenagers know nothing. She'll forget this by Christmas. I hope she doesn't, I said. Her gaze snagged on the boxes stacked neatly in the hallway, labeled in my careful script. Keep. Donate. Kitchen. Memories. You're really going through with this. She sounded genuinely stunned. I am. And when you're alone in that little shoebox apartment, she asked. No family. No one checking on you. No birthday posts. What then? I'll have myself, I said. And people who choose me on purpose. I'd rather live in a small place with honest silence than a big one where every joke is at my expense. You're throwing everything away, she said. No, I said, picking up the trust binder from the side table and setting it between us like a line. For the first time, I'm choosing what to keep. She stared at the binder as if it might bite. Don't expect us to come running back when you regret this, she said finally. I won't regret it, I replied. And I won't be running. She left in a flurry of perfume and indignation. The door closed behind her with more satisfaction than any slam I could have given it. Later, my phone chimed with a message from Lila. She came home raging. You okay? Perfectly, I replied. Some doors have to close, Lila. That doesn't mean you're on the wrong side. A heart appeared a moment later, followed by another message. I'm still bringing cookies Thursday. Don't stand me up. I smiled. I wouldn't. When Victor called 2 days later, his voice was brisk but warm. Everything's filed, Tori. The trust is active. The will's updated. Power of attorney revoked. Bank notified. From a legal perspective, you're steering your own ship now. Imagine that, I said. At my age. I'm proud of you, he said. It was a simple sentence. I'd heard versions of it my whole life when I did things that made other people comfortable. This felt different. Like a verdict I'd earned. At the bank, I handed over the last stack of signed documents. The clerk, young, nervous, efficient, handled them with surprising reverence. At the post office, I rented a P.O. box. Forwarding address? The clerk asked. No, I said. If anyone important needs me, they'll find a way. Back home, the afternoon light slanted softly through the curtains. I brewed tea and pulled out my medical directive. A copy for my doctor, one for the fireproof box, one for my new trust binder. It felt like sewing the final seam on a dress I'd been altering for years. At 3:30, Lila arrived with a plastic container of homemade cookies and a magazine quiz titled What Type of Flower Are You? We sat on the porch, circling answers in pencil. Apparently, I was a winter rose, resilient, quiet, hard to kill. She was a marigold, stubborn, bright, impossible to ignore. Fits, she said, grinning. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. I made you something, she said, suddenly shy. It's just a sketch. Don't laugh. I opened it. A pencil drawing. A woman seated at a table, back straight, expression calm. Opposite her, a dinner table crowded with shadowy figures, all turned away. The woman had a plate in front of her, a simple loaf of bread and a steaming mug. A door stood behind her, open just a crack. She's not angry, Lila said quickly. She's just, finally eating at her own table. I swallowed hard. Can I hang this, in the new place? I asked. Her whole face lit. Really? Really, I said. When she left, the house felt different. Less like it was holding me hostage and more like it was packing its own memories. Moving day came without fanfare. I woke before sunrise, made coffee in my chipped mug, and walked through the emptying rooms barefoot. The linoleum was cool under my feet. The walls looked naked, corners smudged with years of furniture and fingerprints. The movers arrived at 9. 2 young men who said ma'am too much and seemed surprised by how few boxes I had. I'd packed ruthlessly. If it didn't make me feel steadier, it didn't come. By noon, the truck was loaded. Only echoes remained. I walked through every room one last time. My hand skimmed the banister, the door frames. The spot on the kitchen wall where Daniel used to measure his height in pencil. The marks were painted over now. But under certain light, you could still see them like ghosts. In the empty hallway, I set an envelope in the drawer of the old side table I was leaving. Inside, a single key and a note that read, "This house taught me everything I needed. Thank you." I locked the front door and slid the key through the mail slot. I did not look back walking down the driveway. The apartment smelled like new paint and cardboard. The movers put the boxes where I told them to. I tipped them too much. I didn't care. Teresa from the office knocked 10 minutes after they left. Holding a small potted succulent in a pot shaped like a cat. "Welcome home," she said. "For your windowsill." "Thank you," I said, placing it gently by the kitchen sink. "We'll try not to kill each other." The first thing I unpacked was the kettle. The second was Lila's drawing. I hung it by the window where the afternoon light turned the pencil lines silver. That night, I made toast for dinner and ate it on the tiny balcony wrapped in a blanket. No yelling. No thudding music. Just the wind and the distant bark of a dog. I didn't feel empty. I felt spacious. A week later, the house sold. Victor called to tell me an older couple with no children had made an offer above asking. "They like the history," he said. "They'll get plenty," I replied. I didn't go back for a final walkthrough. Victor signed the closing papers on my behalf. When the money hit my account, I didn't stare at the numbers the way I did the day I paid that first down payment. I went to the bank, opened a separate account, and made one transaction. At Haven House, the director, a woman with tired eyes and a posture that dared the world to push her one more inch, nearly dropped the pen when she saw the amount on the check. "This will put 3 families in apartments," she said. "Right now. Not next year. Right now. It's for the women who leave without shoes," I said. "And the ones who still think they should stay." She cried. I didn't. My tears had done their part already. This was something else. Intention. My day settled into a new sort of rhythm. Morning coffee. A walk to the corner shop where the clerk started calling me Banana Bread Lady after Lila talked about me. A newspaper read all the way through or not, depending on how much I cared. Afternoon visits from June, who now came by with stories about her cat finally returning and smelling like motor oil. Lila came twice a week. She never brought Sienna. She never brought Daniel. Sometimes she brought her sketchbook. Sometimes just homework. Once she showed up with a shoebox. "I'm hiding contraband," she said, setting it on the floor. Inside, a notebook. A phone charger. A silver necklace Sienna would have hated. And a photo of her and me at the zoo years ago. Both of us sticky with melted ice cream. Laughing at something out of frame. "I like having proof," she said. "That we were always like this. Even if they pretend we weren't." "Keep it here," I said. "This can be your evidence drawer." "Do you think people can change?" she asked one night, watching me slice lemons. "Sometimes," I said. "But not because you beg them. Because they run out of ways to lie to themselves." "Are you still mad?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm finished." There's a difference. One afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. "Mom, I don't know how to fix any of this. I don't know if you want it fixed. I let things happen that I should have stopped. I laughed when I shouldn't have. I put Sienna's comfort ahead of yours. I was a coward. Lila is different around you now. Braver. Softer. I can see that. I know that's you. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I also don't deserve your silence, but you're giving me that anyway. I'm sorry. I hope one day you'll let me try to be better than I've been." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer with Lila's zoo photo and Frank's old watch. Not forgiveness. Not rejection. Just a place where it could exist without demanding an answer. On my 73rd birthday, I woke to the sound of rain tapping the window. No balloons. No group texts. No obligatory brunch invites. Just light filtering through clean curtains and the quiet of a space that owed me nothing and yet belonged to me entirely. I made pancakes. 2 of them. Ate them with honey and pear slices off my smallest plate. I set Frank's old photograph on the chair across from me. In it, we were both spattered with paint, laughing on the front porch we'd just finished years and years ago. Well, I said to the photo, we got here. Not the way I pictured. But we got here. At noon, Lila arrived with red tulips and a handmade card. On the front, she'd painted 2 chairs on a balcony, one empty, one with a mug on the arm. Inside it read, "Thank you for keeping a seat for me when I didn't deserve it." We had tea and toast. She told me she'd applied to volunteer at Haven House that summer. She'd started talking to the school counselor about a support group for kids who didn't feel safe at home. "Can I use your name?" she asked. "Like, to talk about boundaries and stuff?" "Only if you use it for something true," I said. "That's the only way I use it now," she replied. Before she left, she studied me with the frankness of someone sketching with their eyes. "You look different," she said. "I feel different," I said. "You look like someone who doesn't jump when a door slams," she added. After she left, I sat on the balcony with a book I'd bought 15 years ago and never opened. I read 3 chapters, then put it down. Not because I was tired. Because I didn't need to prove to anyone, not even myself, that I could finish everything I started. Some things I was allowed to set aside. Some things I was allowed to refuse. A few days later, a simple text came from an unknown number. "Happy birthday, Mom. I didn't send a card. I don't think I've earned that yet. Just wanted you to know I'm still here." I stared at it for a long time. Then I put the phone down without responding. Not out of rage. Not out of pettiness. Some apologies aren't conversations. They're stones laid down quietly where damage once was. My job wasn't to throw them back. That evening, Marcia and Ida came over. Nora sent a crossword puzzle with a note, 14 down made me think of you. The answer was Anchor. We ate cherry pie from the store, complained about the price of everything, and speculated about whether Teresa from the office was secretly dating the mailman. They left around 9. I stood in the doorway for a moment and listened. Not for footsteps leaving me behind. Not for the echo of a slammed door. Just for the sound of a small apartment holding gentle noise. Before bed, I opened my journal and wrote the last entry in that volume. They once wondered why I was still alive. Now I know. To remember my own name. To set my own table. To keep the door open just wide enough for those who knock with clean hands and their own keys. That night. After writing in my journal. I left it open on the kitchen table instead of tucking it back into the drawer. Maybe it was because the apartment felt brighter, or because the silence had changed its shape. It wasn't the heavy silence of waiting anymore. It was soft. Spacious. The kind of quiet that lets you breathe deeper instead of shallower. The rain outside had stopped, leaving the pavement dark and reflective. Streetlights turned the world into long stripes of gold. I stood by the window and watched the shimmer of passing cars, none of them slowing near my building. For the first time, the absence didn't sting. It felt like freedom. Around 9, there was a soft knock. Not the sharp, insistent kind Daniel used, nor the impatient tap Sienna favored. This one was hesitant. Careful. A small sound, but it traveled through the apartment like a ripple. When I opened the door, June stood there with her missing cat tucked under one arm like a loaf of bread. "Found him," she said, breathless. "He was in my neighbor's shed, the little criminal. Thought you'd want to know since you were worried." "I wasn't worried," I said, but smiled anyway. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The cat wriggled out of her arms and pranced into my kitchen like he owned it. "Your place looks cozy," she said, glancing around. You settling in all right? I think so, I replied. Some days feel lighter than others. That's how new beginnings work, she said, easing onto a chair. They don't arrive all at once. They drip. She told me about the cat's adventure, how she found him curled up on a pile of tarps like he had paid rent. We laughed. It was small, ordinary laughter, not forced, not polite. The kind that slips out without permission. When she left, she paused at the door. You know, Tori. I'm glad you're here. This building needed someone like you. Someone like me. For years, I had been someone taken for granted, overlooked, laughed at behind fences. Hearing someone like you without the weight of expectation behind it felt like pure oxygen. The next morning I woke early, long before the sun had fully risen. I brewed coffee and opened all the windows. The air that rushed and smelled like wet stone and possibility. I let it fill the apartment, fill my lungs, fill the space behind my ribs where old resentments used to live. I spent the morning arranging the last of my belongings. The sewing tin went on the shelf by the window. Frank's letter stayed in the drawer by my bed. Lila's drawing hung perfectly straight above the small table where I kept my tea. Every object had a place, and for once, so did I. Later that afternoon, I walked to the community garden down the block. I hadn't been there before, but I'd seen it from the bus, a little fenced patch of earth with herbs and tomato vines and hand-painted signs warning the neighborhood kids not to steal the strawberries. A woman with sun-weathered skin and gardening gloves looked up as I approached. Looking to grow something? She asked. Maybe, I answered. Something small. She pointed to an empty patch of soil near a cluster of marigolds. That space is open. Belonged to a man who moved to Florida. Good dirt. Grows strong things. I stood there a moment, feeling the weight of the word strong. Then I knelt and pressed my palm to the soil. It was cool. Damp. Quietly alive. I didn't bring seeds with me, so I simply sat there for a while, elbows on my knees, watching the bees drift lazily between the flowers. It felt like a beginning, even if nothing had been planted yet. When I got home, the apartment felt warm in a way I hadn't expected, not from the temperature, but from the sense that something had shifted. Like the place itself was recognizing me, adjusting around me, accepting me. My phone buzzed on the counter. For a moment, my stomach tightened, expecting Daniel or Sienna. But the notification was from Lila. I made another drawing. Want to see it tomorrow? I smiled as I typed back. Yes. Bring your sketchbook. And the good pencils. A second message arrived almost immediately. I'm glad you didn't disappear, Grandma. I leaned against the kitchen counter, letting the words settle. I didn't disappear. I changed my shape. I changed my address. I changed my life. And I finally chose myself in a way I never had before. Before bed, I added one last line to the open journal page. I am no longer asking why I'm still alive. I'm finally answering it.